You know, when you look around, our world is built on some pretty incredible materials. But so much of it, so much of what we consider modern, was made possible by just one single, game-changing invention. One that took simple iron and turned it into the very backbone of the world we live in today.
It kind of sounds like a riddle, right? How in the world could a weapon of war give us the amazing cities and skylines we have today? Well, believe it or not, that very strange, very unlikely connection is exactly where our story kicks off. All right, so let's jump back in time. The year is 1854, and we need to meet our main character, a really prolific English inventor named Henry Bessemer.
So Bessemer, he'd come up with this brilliant new kind of artillery shell that could spin, which made it way more accurate. Napoleon III of France was super interested, but there was this huge problem. The cannons they had back then were made of cast iron, and they were just too brittle. The sheer force needed to fire Bessemer's new shell would have shattered them into a million pieces. So he had this amazing invention that was basically useless.
Now, to really get why this was such a big deal, you have to understand the world of metals he was living in. It was absolutely the age of iron, but it was an iron with some serious limitations.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is the fundamental trade-off of the era. On one side, you had cast iron, super cheap to make and really hard, but it had a lot of carbon in it, which made it brittle. I mean, one good whack and it could just crack. On the other side, you had wrought iron. This stuff was tough. It could really take a beating, but it was also soft and incredibly expensive because you had to go through this long, painful process to get the carbon out. So your choices were basically cheap and breakable or strong but super expensive.
But here's the thing. There was a perfect middle ground: steel. It really had the best of both worlds. It was stronger than cast iron and harder than wrought iron. The catch? The process to make it was so difficult and so time-consuming that it was called doubly expensive. It was a total luxury item, something you'd use for a fancy sword, definitely not for everyday things like cannons or bridges.
And this is where Bessemer, who is a total outsider to the iron industry, has this revolutionary idea. He wasn't just trying to tweak an existing metal. He was about to completely reinvent how it was made from the ground up. So the whole problem, the key to everything, wasn't what steel was. Everyone knew what steel was. It was how to make it affordable. Bessemer's entire mission boiled down to this one simple question. How could he get that extra carbon out of cheap cast iron in a way that was fast, easy, and most importantly, cheap?
His solution was just shockingly simple. He figured, why not just blast air straight through the molten iron? Now, everyone else thought this was a crazy idea, that it would just cool the whole thing down and turn it into a solid chunk. But Bessemer discovered something incredible. The oxygen in the air actually set the carbon and other impurities on fire, turning the whole mixture into its own roaring furnace. The process literally generated its own heat, burning away all the junk and leaving behind pure liquid steel, in a matter of minutes, not days, minutes.
So in 1856, Bessemer announces his breakthrough to the world. Iron makers are going wild. But this incredible moment of triumph, well, it's about to turn into a complete and utter disaster.
I mean, can you imagine the excitement? People were pouring fortunes into building these new converters based on his design. The entire industry was poised to be changed overnight. This was it: cheap, high-quality steel for everyone. But it didn't work. Not at all. The steel that came pouring out of their brand new converters was brittle. It cracked. It was completely useless. The dream just turned into a total nightmare, and suddenly Bessemer's reputation was on the verge of ruin. The whole industry turned on him. He was ridiculed in public. The same people who had just invested millions in his idea now saw him as a total fraud, a crackpot who had sold them a fantasy. So what on earth went wrong? Well, it all came down to this one hidden saboteur, a chemical called phosphorus. As it turns out, by sheer dumb luck, the specific iron ore Bessemer had used for his own experiments just happened to be naturally phosphorus-free. But most iron ores weren't, and his air blasting process couldn't get rid of it. And that phosphorus left the final steel fatally flawed. So when Bessemer finally figured this out, nobody wanted to hear it. They'd already been burned, and they weren't about to trust him again. So in this incredible act of defiance and pure self-belief, he borrowed a bunch of money and decided, fine, I'll do it myself. He built his own steelworks to prove them all wrong.
And this brings us to his amazing comeback.
By importing the right kind of phosphorus-free ore, Bessemer's own factory started churning out perfect, high-grade steel, and he used it to completely upend the entire market.
He didn't just make steel, he made it unbelievably cheap. He started selling his superior product for $100 less per ton than his competitors. He just couldn't argue with that kind of price. The industry was forced to pay attention, and just like that, the age of steel had truly begun.
And the impact was immediate and massive. Suddenly, all these engineering dreams were becoming reality. Railroads could finally stretch across continents on durable steel rails. Huge steel ships started crossing the oceans. The skeletons of the skyscrapers you see today began to climb into the sky, all held up by steel beams. Tractors, cars, massive bridges, and yeah, even much stronger cannons, the very thing that started this whole journey. It was all made possible by cheap, plentiful steel.
And that really brings us to today. Even with all of our advanced composites, our fancy plastics and alloys, this statement is still fundamentally true. When we need something to be unbelievably strong, to bear incredible weight, and to really stand the test of time, we still turn to the metal that Henry Bessemer unlocked for the world. The legacy of his fiery process is literally all around us.